Jin Yucheng's novel Flowers text chapter 6. 1. Tao Tao worked as a vegetable vendor in his early years, and later sold Xingbao cigarettes, set up a crab stall, and opened a small hotel. At a certain stage in the 1990s, sea bass sashimi was popular. A housewife introduced the owner of a certain fish pond, and Tao Tao made a profit. However, the good times did not last long. Raw sea bass was infected with the liver fluke Paragonomus, and the relevant departments issued a document. Raw food is prohibited. When diners order a la carte, the restaurant only offers steamed ham slices, sweet and sour, and squirrel and tomato sauce. The price of sea bass has dropped. At the same time, seafood is booming. Seafood guys from Fujian and Guangdong have landed in the city one after another, contracting aquatic products for restaurants and providing full-scale fish tank systems. They are good at raising seafood, and Tao Tao is tied up. Coincidentally, hairy crabs can be transported by plane, and the market is booming from north to south. People from Hong Kong, Taiwan, and northerners began to take advantage of them, and business was booming. Tao Tao returned to the crab business, opened a company, made phone calls to get accounts, and got money from the company's gift sheets. When doing all kinds of big business, everything was done based on the approval from the above, and a large number of gifts were given. When talking about business, we just go north and get approval. The businessman issued a list of gifts for the occasion, and the two most fashionable ones were clean water hairy crabs, and the second was a Panasonic LD, which is a large disc player. The gift list is, for example, 30 baskets of crabs, 20 or 30 large disc players, and several sets of discs. Tao Tao gradually became an expert in this kind of list. In this business, hairy crabs have a high technical content. You need to know the art of crabs, be able to look at the goods, and be good at negotiating prices. The sellers of large disc players, including private disc scalpers, are basically dead, and the model and content are basically dead. The crabs are live goods. When they are shipped to Beijing, they will be dead in 10 baskets, and everything will be lost. Not only the copper and silver, but also the face, lining, even lives are at stake. For several consecutive autumn and winter seasons, Bang Mai was much more peaceful when she went to bed. The man was highly nervous, and his body was the most important thing. Regarding crabs, someone is looking for Tao Tao. The company boss is looking for Tao Tao. The owner of the electrical appliance store has a commission, and there is also a crab business in the hands of scalpers. Tao Tao is really busy. One autumn night, Bang Mai accompanied Tao Tao on their way to Chengdu Road and went to the room of Mr. Meng, a disc scalper, to look at the goods. Mr. Meng is a clerk in an audio store. He picks up clients during the day, takes them into his room at night, selects movies, and rides to horses. The two of them walked into Mr. Meng's room, and there was already a female guest sitting quietly drinking tea. The front living room and patio on the ground floor are sealed into a large room. The east-facing wall is full of disc drawers and has a movable wooden escalator. There are pits and valleys filled with large discs. Tao Tao looked inside the room and saw no women's items, so she concluded that Mr. Meng was single. Bang Mai said in a cooing voice, "Mr. Meng, this is my husband Tao Tao." Mr. Meng didn't say anything, opened several large drawers, nodded and said, "This is the ordinary stuff. You two can take a look." Tao Tao came closer and saw that the drawer was dazzled. There were densely packed rows of original albums measuring 40 centimeters square. The envelopes were large and heavy. After taking out 3 or 4 of them, they were no longer stable. Bang Mai said, "Mr. Meng is too arrogant. Come here and help me look at it." Mr. Meng said that you two should look through it first, to see that the goods come from authentic sources. "And how much are you planning to buy on this trip?" Bang Mai said, "Round 20 pieces, for senior leaders, and my husband also wants to buy a few." Mr. Meng said that it is rare for Shanghai's people to buy self-viewing movies. The pottery is silent. Mr. Meng said, "I'm not looking down on people. The government prohibits private video studios. Each disc costs at least $300 to $400, and you have to touch it yourself. If you have this kind of value, buy it." Tao Tao said, "Hey, it's none of my business whether I buy it or not. "I'm a dead old egg." Mr. Meng choked. At this moment, the woman having tea came over, presented her with a business card, and spoke in northern dialect. "Hello, you two. I am also here to watch the disc. Let's take a look together. I know something about it." Tao Tao took the business card, which was Pan Jing, Deputy General Manager of Shanghai Tianan Industrial Co. Limited. Mr. Meng came up, took out a 7-star cigarette and said to Tao Tao, "I'm sorry, there are 2 items of goods that will be detained as soon as they get off the ship." "I'm in a bad mood," Fang Mai smiled and said. "How can Tao Tao get angry? Mr. Meng is serious about business." Tao Tao said, "I don't know anything. I really don't understand." Fang Mai said that Mr. Meng is courageous and has already made so many films. Mr. Meng said, "Where is it? The main thing is that now the bosses and leaders, big and small, everyone likes to see it, and more goods are coming in." Fang Mai said, "I can only wait aside and ask Mr. Meng and Mr. Pan to help me solve it." Pan Jing spoke northern dialect. "Sister, who are you going to give the movie you bought this time?" Fang Mai was stunned. Pan Jing said, "We have to understand what the cultural background is. Whether it is a man or a woman, whether it is a big leader or an individual boss." The pottery is silent. Pan Jing said, "I have taken no less than 400 to 500 of the CDs here, which are basically divided into 3 categories, namely literary films, action films, and erotic films. The last category also has specialties, whether it is Tindobears or Japanese, those who play uniforms, or those who play disgusting, and those who play with real swords and guns directly. For another example, the 3 major categories I mentioned earlier. You have to subdivide Hong Kong and Taiwan, the United States, European movies, and so on." The 4 of them gradually chatted and laughed. When the movie was selected, Fang Mai suddenly stood under the street light and looked at Tao Tao. "I went back to bed and carefully collected my harvest for the night." Tao Tao said, "I wanted to talk about it originally. I have become so familiar with this kind of small alley after twists and turns." Meng's surname is not a good person at first glance. Fang Mei is silent. Tao Tao said that when he saw the man named Meng, he became so coquettish that he was a slut. Recognizing Pan Jing, Tao Tao was silent. The way Pan Jing talked about LD was like seeing tranquility in chaos, which left a deep impression on her. In the past, at the opening of a movie, the word quiet popped up on the screen, written in regular script or handwriting, accompanied by a moon and a few wickers. The audience is collectively literate. They calm down and look at the structure of the word Jing, full of expectations. The slide projector was unstable and worn, and the word quiet trembled. The moon was sprinkled with sesame seeds, and everyone was sure of Mount Tai. The word quiet had come, and it was time to start and watch. As a conditioned reflex, Pan Jing wanted Tao Tao to return to the children's playground this time. Tao Tao could not tell Fang Mai this kind of thoughts. "When I think of Pan Jing, everything becomes quiet." The Shanghai women's 3-character scripture, Suo, Si, Zheng, Tao Tao, understands everything. Shanghai women have a meticulous and pragmatic spirit, integrity, aspiration, calculations, and are familiar with the world. But for Pan Jing, all the previous responses and methods were completely ineffective. In the autumn of the next year, Pan Jing called and asked about the hairy crab market. Half a month later, I called again and asked about the crab scripture. Tao Tao speaks the northern dialect and speaks in a shaky manner. Before the 1980s, northerners generally did not eat river crabs. People from Dalian, Qingdao, ate sea crabs. There were small crabs in the rivers in the north. Children herding cattle in the countryside would catch a few and throw them away. If you put it in the fire and burn it, you won't be able to peel off much flesh. Pan Jing smiled. Tao Tao said that crabs are the same as dishes. You must understand each other's background. There are many big leaders who are from Jiangnan. When they were young, they went to the north to become officials. When it comes to crabs, you can't be careless. Northern cadres from Suzhou and Shanghai, bosses from Hong Kong and Taiwan. You have to be careful when choosing. It must be clear water, white-bellied golden retriever. The purpose of giving a gift is to impress the other party. Hairy crabs, especially crab roe, are unique in the south of the Yangtze River. Old and beautiful crab crafts. Offshore crab canning factories catch sea crabs. Immediately pry open the crab lid. Dig out a lot of crab roe. Throw it into the trash can. Split the crab meat into 8 large pieces and can them quickly. If the gift recipient is a foreigner, you might as well give a few pounds of imported snowflakes or Xiling steak. As for the real northerners, including Northeast, Sichuan, Guizhou, Gansu, the general appearance is enough, with a few crab books, Suzhou crab-eating tools, Zhenjiang vinegar, fresh ginger. The details are lively. Don't be afraid of trouble. China people only care about friendship. They are rigid to strangers and soft and approachable to friends. No laws, rules or regulations can beat human kindness. Everything is okay. Panjing speaks northern dialect and is detailed, Tao Tao said. I will take care of the specific details. Panjing said that Tao Tao was so considerate and touched her so much. Tao Tao said, "You're welcome. I won't make any money from you." Panjing said, "What are you doing?" Tao Tao said, "I do." Panjing you choked. Tao Tao also hung up the phone. From then on, Panjing often called me. Once I said, "Tao Tao, let's not talk about crabs anymore." "Okay. Let's meet," Tao Tao said. "I'm too busy recently. Let's talk about it later." In fact, Tao Tao was hesitant. The scene of the meeting appeared in front of her several times. Every time it came to the final step, Tao Tao stood still. A month later, Panjing received a powerful phone call. Panjing spoke northern dialect. "Tao Tao, you are my best friend. You must see me tomorrow. Only when I see you will I feel at ease." Panjing's company is near Zhongshan Park. That day, the two of them went to the Yugu restaurant on Yuyuan Road for dinner. On the phone, Panjing was a little out of sorts, but when she met Tao Tao, she smiled freely. Under the light, Panjing maintained her appearance of having tea in the LD scalper's room. She claimed to be from Hebei and had been in Shanghai for many years. The legal representative of the company was Panjing's female classmate. She was a so-called best friend and had quite a background. Panjing is responsible for part of the operation. Her husband and children live in Shijiazhuang. She is planning to buy 2 houses recently, but she is undecided whether to let her husband move to Shanghai. The padre is silent. Panjing talked about marriage, relationships, etc., but Tao Tao remained cautious. Compared to Panjing, Tao Tao felt that the women he had been with before were much more relaxed and homely. After the meal, the two walked for a while and passed the nearby chaining cinema. There was a coffee bar and a small dance hall on the 2nd floor, and a guest house on the 3rd floor. Panjing stopped and said, "Drink another cup of coffee." Tao Tao agreed. The two went to the 2nd floor, where the neon lights were flashing and there was a small dance hall next to the corridor. The lights dimmed and at a slow tempo moment, 4 or 5 couples of men and women stood on the dark dance floor and danced to steps, barely moving. The saxophone plays solo, with a soft voice and lingering sobs. "Open the other door and go in." The car seat is quite bright. The two of them ate coffee and snacks side by side. Music came faintly, and Tao Tao relaxed a lot, with Panjing beside him. At this moment, there was no need to talk much. He could use the music to stay quiet. The two of them were spending time until 9:30, when they suddenly heard a loud scream outside and a knock on the door. A disheveled waiter rushed in and said, "Quick, quick, quick, it's on fire. Run away quickly." Tao Tao was covered in cold sweat, so he pulled Panjing and ran to the door. A large amount of smoke poured in. Several musicians passed by, followed closely by a dancer with one high heel, jumping and jumping. The ballroom was in flames. Tao Tao's heart jumped into her throat. She tightened her grip on Panjing and said, "Hurry up." Panjing held on tightly. A third of the corridor was filled with smoke and no stairs could be seen. The two of them bent down and walked for a while. The dancing woman in front took off her high heels and opened a door. Tao Tao dragged Panjing to follow. Unexpectedly, they only had to go up the stairs and open the door. Smoke followed the spring door and poured into a large cloud. The two of them ran desperately to the 3rd floor, which was the corridor of the guest house. Fireworks were coming up from the main staircase. The 3rd floor was a mess. Tenants, dancers, Everyone was making ants on the hot pot. The direction was unknown. They bent down and walked along the corridor, screaming and crawling. At this moment, Cao Cao understood that most of them would be burned into a pile of charred corpses tonight. Next to her, Pan Jing was disheveled and unrecognizable. She had a handbag on her arm and held Cao Cao tightly with one hand, her eyes miserable. At this moment, an old man on duty walked out of the smoke, carrying a board full of keys. The old uncle said calmly, "Don't panic. There is a peace staircase." The old uncle walked forward with his back straight, and the men and women followed him one after another with their backs bent. At the end of the corridor, there was indeed an iron door, with an iron grill across it, and a padlock hanging on it. There were 20 or 30 keys on the wooden board of the old uncle, and he began to patiently open the locks one by one. It took a long time. An out-of-town guest raised an old-fashioned waxed cast-iron mop and spoke loudly in northern dialect. "Master, get out of the way. I'll smash it. I'll smash it." But after 2 hits, the out-of-towner soft-legged crab fell down and could only breathe. When people are at the critical stage of life, Cao Cao knows that the movie footage is basically fake. The blood has been scattered. There is no strength. And it is just a dead crab. The old uncle's key continued to be tried and turned on. Fireworks came from behind, and the woman with high heels next to her suddenly hugged Cao Cao's arms tightly, crying and calling out for help. Cao Cao became numb and closed his eyes tightly, preparing to die quietly. On both sides of the body, there are 2 women hugging each other tightly, which can be considered a romantic death. Fireworks filled the air, and suddenly, a snapping sound was heard. The iron gate was pulled, and the emergency door opened wide. Everyone tried their best to escape downstairs. The ground floor was a small alley, leading directly to Yuyuan Road. At this moment, the fire truck sirens were blaring and the police cars arrived. Pan Jing, a woman in high heels, pulled Cao Cao's arms tightly. Cao Cao's face was red and her tongue was trembling. She hugged her from left to right. She was so lost that she walked across the road in a panic, panting and shaking. At this moment, all the passers-by were focused on the fire, the firefighting, the fire trucks, including the life-saving vehicles coming from the hospital, and had no time to pay attention to the 3 people who had just escaped death. The 2 women held Cao Cao tightly and watched the fire brigade put out the fire for a while, before they realized they had to let go. The woman with high heels made a cry and spoke in northern dialect. "My luggage is still on the 3rd floor. What should I do? My bastard, my male colleague, a heartless bastard, talks sweet words while dancing, touches up and down, and gets angry when he talks. Come on, get the fuck out of here first. I know men, none of them are good." As he spoke, he knelt down and cried bitterly. Northern women generally dress more revealingly, running around upstairs and downstairs, and are basically naked. Pan Jing couldn't see it and helped the woman cover up her dress. Pan Jing said, "You get up first. It's already like this. Don't worry. Get up first." Cao Cao spoke northern dialect. "Sister, if she can come out alive, she is better than anything else." The most unforgettable things are basically at night. Cao Cao encountered many women at night. This time I went to the album scalper's room and got to know Pan Jing. At night, having dinner with Pan Jing, I encountered sky fire burning at night. Running up to the 3rd floor, the woman tightened her high heels. It was night. It's still night. The woman with high heels said, "Brother, I said something wrong? You are the only good man." Pan Jing smiled. The woman said that when I came to Shanghai with my male colleague, we didn't have any elder brother or sister-in-law. My little sister weighed more than 100 pounds, so we just told her that I would order it ready-made and don't bother with the crematorium. Let's live together. The pottery is silent. The woman said, "Brother and sister-in-law, please leave your contact address. Who will make us destined?" Speaking of her sister-in-law, Pan Jing was a little embarrassed. The 2 of them were ready to say goodbye to the woman and leave the place of right and wrong as soon as possible. After listening to this expression of gratitude, they started talking again. Pan Jing left her business card, and the 3 of them crossed the road and found the fire brigade cadres to learn about the situation. The other party said that the fire has been extinguished. and the cause of the fire needs to be investigated. If the person involved has any information, please provide it." The woman said. I closed my eyes and danced. Heard the screams, smelled the smoke, and the fire had reached the dance floor. Tao Tao and Pan Jing gave the same answer. Fire officials said that they are not allowed to enter the fire scene at the moment. The private luggage in the guest house will be burned and washed away with water cannons. They will talk about it after the scene is cleared. The woman agreed. At this moment, a man rushed in and hugged the woman tightly. He must be a male colleague. Tao Tao and Pan Jing left and walked east along Yuyuan Road for a while. Pan Jing said that Tao Tao was a good man. Tao Tao said that the old uncle who opened the key was a really good man. Pan Jing said, "The old man is nice, but he didn't pull me to save me." Tao Tao said, "I am frightened." Pan Jing leaned on Tao Tao's shoulder and said, "In the most difficult moments, who kept holding me and never let go?" Tao Tao said, "This is the minimum." Pan Jing said softly, "He is a good man. Just send me home." Tao Tao looked at her watch and called a taxi at 1 o'clock in the middle of the night. Pan Jing sat close to her. Tao Tao was in a daze. In the afternoon, he told Feng Mai that he would attend a gathering of old friends. And then he and Pan Jing would have dinner and coffee, running around, hugging each other. Now that they were so intimate, compressed into just a few hours, Tao Tao was in a state of confusion. Ma, seeing Pan Jing next to her, her face was full of joy. Things in the world are often like this. One side is simple, and the other side is full of vicissitudes of life. When the car arrived at the door of an apartment in Xiangwukio, Tao Tao said to Pan Jing, "I will go back with the car and not see her off." Pan Jing woke up, took out the envelope from her handbag, poured out a key, put her face close to Tao Tao and said, "I live here at No. 39A. You can come at any time." The key was firmly stuffed into Tao Tao's palm, and she pressed it hard. With tears streaming down her face, she closed the car door and ran into the apartment without looking back. Tao Tao sighed and returned home. Feng Mai turned over and said, "I have been drinking until now." After a few chirps, she turned over and fell asleep. Tao Tao was restless, taking a bath, eating tea, reading newspapers, and watching TV. He stayed up from about 3 o'clock until the morning sun shone all over Shanghai, and then he fell asleep. It was already 10 o'clock when he got up. After making a few phone calls, we went to the Pacific Ocean for a Japanese set meal at noon. In the afternoon, I went to a certain unit to pick up the invoice. Every time she enters a place, whether it is a large public place or a small office quarter, Tao Tao feels dangerous. She pays attention to the safe passages, door positions, and stairwells when entering. One day I came back feeling unstable. After dinner, my little girl did her homework and Feng Mai did her housework. Tao Tao flipped through the newspaper and suddenly saw a piece of news. Yesterday, a fire broke out in a bar in Zhongshan Park game. Mihua.net. Fortunately, there were no casualties. Tao Tao, who had been depressed for a whole day, had an outlet. She poked the newspaper title with her hand and said, "It's in the newspaper. It's been in the newspaper." Feng Mai said, "What?" Tao Tao said, "Last night, I squatted here. The fire forced me to run away. If I was burned, how could the whole family do it?" Feng Mai wiped her hands, took the newspaper to read, then took Tao Tao, went into the bedroom, closed the door and said, "Tao Tao, we went to Zhongshan Park to drink and drank, right? We said we were going to Tibet Road at Baxian Bridge. Sit down and sit down. I want to ask carefully, who did I drink with, whether it was a man or a woman? When I came back in the middle of the night, I wanted to ask, now, I'm wearing a gang, right? Tell me honestly." Tao Tao complained in her heart, thinking of Pan Jing's tone and Teresa Tang's gentle singing skills. At this moment, Tao Tao just wanted to be hugged and comforted. After experiencing the fire, Tao Tao felt like his whole body was riddled with holes and a dead crab. 2. On Sunday afternoon, Mairui prepared to go on a date with Mr. Kang. Her hair and nails were done. She put on new stockings, changed her rings and necklaces, and stood in front of the large mirror, picking up and down, and then replaced her light gray fine mesh stockings and in summer's lace garter belt. Black low-cut vest, cigarette ash suit, a little powder, and pearl earrings. Walking into the second floor of Tang Yen, Mr. Kang was already waiting. Mary unbuttoned his jacket and looked like he was sitting. Mr. Kang looked at it carefully and said that he has gained energy recently and lost a little weight. Meiru Yanran said, "I'm really noisy and thin. I quarreled with my husband and my mother. I had no time to dress up. I hurriedly grabbed a piece of clothing and ran out in a daze." Mr. Kang said, "My husband's daughter is here." Meiru said, "I still live on Hanggu North Sichuan Road. The room is bigger, but I have moved back to my parents' home." Mr. Kang said that it is normal for couples to quarrel. Meili said, "It was all because I got married too hastily and I had a special experience." Mr. Kang said nothing. Meiru said that when people talk about it, they are all acquaintances in the circle. If it spreads, it will be unpleasant to everyone. Mr. Kang said, "It doesn't matter. I am the safe. If you hear it, close the door." Meiru said, "I used to fall in love with two old acquaintances. One was Hesheng and the other was Mr. Bao." Mr. Kang said nothing. Meiru said that at that time, these two people were chasing me at the same time, and they were just scheming. Later, I understood that in Shanghai, the candle was burning at both ends. Except for me, the lotus was turned on the bottom of my tongue, and I was also talking about Baiping. People, Mr. Kang said that in the end, Hu Sheng and Baiping got married. Meiru said, after being married for more than half a year, my wife fled to a foreign country and will not come back. It seems that she has a physical problem. Mr. Kang said, "Where is Mr. Bao?" Meiru said, "It's too ugly to say it. I suspected that this man had a mental problem. At that time, he kept contacting me warmly and chatting with me, but I simply ignored him. Later, I became more serious and it was at a critical stage. I always started to pretend to be confused. No wonder there is such a man. But in the end, I was completely scared and retreated from the rapids." Mr. Kang said nothing. Meiru said that because he was in such a bad mood, a friend at the time introduced him to a man from North Sichuan Road. When I met him, he saw that his shirt collar was dirty and he was shaking his feet happily. But he had a house. He sighed in his heart and got married in a hurry. Okay, now I know that every step I take is always a mistake. Mr. Kang said nothing. Meiru said that in today's society, the men I like are either single bad guys or married good guys. Especially for a married woman like me, if I associate with a man, the other person may think that I am probably ready to change to a man. To make a coup, in fact, even if I break up with my husband on North Sichuan Road, I don't want to get married again. Mr. Kang said that it is difficult to say what will happen next. Meiru said that during the newlywed stage, I was basically a pure young woman with no experience and no understanding. Later, I felt something was wrong. And every night, that is, Meiru took a sip of tea and made no sound. Mr. Kang said that at night, her husband would go out to play cards or dance. Meryl said nothing. Mr. Kang took a sip of tea and said, "I thought of a joke. When my aunt was newly married, my uncle had to go out every night. He said he went out to listen to books, but actually he went to dance. My aunt thought of a good idea." Mary smiled. Mr. Kang said, "My aunt." Meili said, "My husband doesn't dance." Mr. Kang said that he should prepare a pair of white leather shoes, polish them as white as snow, and let his uncle wear them. If he goes dancing, there will be women's footprints on the shoes, which he cannot escape. Meiru said with a smile, "What's the matter? You can bring a pair of men's leather shoes as a dancer. Also, women are good dancers and are careful. They have a tube of white leather shoe polish and the brush. No marks can be seen." Mr. Kang said with a smile that people in the past were honest. Meiru took a sip of tea and said, "Every time I talk about something important, Mr. Kang will step in and do some nonsense. And, leather shoes, dancing. This is intentional." Mr. Kang said, "I suddenly thought of it." Mary said, "I'm really embarrassed to talk about it." Meryl said nothing. Mr. Kang reminded that Meiru was married at night. Meiru said shyly, "At night, there is a big problem in terms of men and women. People in Shanghai say that it is like forging a silver young spearhead and a crab with soft legs. we're setting off a firecracker. Once it goes off, it disappears. When I describe it this way, Mr. Kang is like, if you think about it, since there is a problem in this area, where did the little girl come from? I can only tell the truth. A few months later, I hired a doctor to prescribe medicine for the man. Mr. Kang said he had never heard of it. Mairui said, in Shanghai, everything is magical. Most of the women who ask for prescriptions, prescribe medicine, and follow the old rules are sincere. This doctor is like giving away a child to Guanyin. Mr. Kang said that the male doctor's name is Guanyin. Mairui said, Guanyin Bodhisattva is a neutral person. He can be either male or female. Mr. Kang said nothing. Mairui said, one dose of medicine cost 1,900 yuan. My husband took it and his appetite was completely whetted at night. He often worked overtime and started a small stove. For 2 weeks, I had ants crawling all over my body and had chickens all over my body every day. Duck, all kinds of meat and vegetables, and a little girl. In the past few years of marriage, I have only really been a woman for these 2 weeks. Mr. Kang said nothing. Mairui said that the man was later hospitalized. His hands and feet were cold, and he coughed every day. Mr. Kang said, it's over. Fang Yu Baojian is here. Mairui lowered his voice and said, the man doubted me and hired a charlatan to call me a pest. I feel wronged. It is normal for a woman to have such a request. Why do I only blame the doctor and not myself? Alas, it's just me to blame. I lacked knowledge before marriage and was too pure, so I suffered after marriage. Mr. Kang said, where is my husband now? Mairui said that he took a long sick leave to take care of his daughter. Mr. Kang said that the prescribing doctor was later sentenced to several years in prison. Mary said, what? Mr. Kang said that he would be in litigation for at least 10 years. Mairui said, where can I get it? I can't make an appointment at all. I have invitations everywhere. I often go to outpatient clinics and other places. I have received so many banners. I am like a close friend in the female world. Mr. Kang said that in the eyes of men, this medicine is like a skeleton under a spring or a butterfly in a dream, which is scary. Meili said, what do you mean? Mr. Kang said that after exerting a man's lifelong strength, working on the front line, working overtime and surprise attacks, and dying in the line of duty, it was basically over. Mairui twisted her waist and said, Mr. Kang is really selfish. Mr. Kang said that women are more naive, more stupid, and are more advanced liars than men. Mairui said, so, I am preparing for a divorce, and my mother is also preparing for a divorce. Mr. Kang took a sip of tea and said, Mom, are you okay? Meili said that as soon as my father agreed to the divorce, my mother started to quarrel with me. Yesterday, she even complained about me why I was in such a hurry to pack the boxes and pack the bags. I said, my mother is going to Hong Kong and doesn't plan to go back to Shanghai. I'm here to help. What's wrong? My mother cried. In fact, I was also sad and cried several times. My mother-in-law said that if Mairui wants a house, it's okay. My mother-in-law will go to Hong Kong to marry Xiao Kai. She doesn't need the old house in Shanghai at all. Mairui took a sip of tea, took out the makeup mirror, looked at it, and said, I've been talking about it now, and I'm scared. Why do I talk about all the things that I can't talk about? Mr. Kang said nothing. Mairui straightened her waist and said, actually, divorced women and I are basically the same. Living alone means loneliness. If a man treats me well, no matter whether he is married or unmarried, I understand everything. I won't cause the other party any trouble. We can meet each other whenever we are free. Mr. Kang said nothing. One morning a few months later, Mr. Kang returned to Shanghai from Wuxi. The driver turned on the radio and played a homely talk show. A woman talked about her relationship experience. Her voice was similar to Mairui's. Mr. Kang recalled a mulberry field, a man and a woman not far away, and gooeying. The light and fresh air drifted all around, and finally the lights dimmed and the moon faded, turning into a rapidly retreating landscape. At this moment, Mr. Kang suddenly wanted to chat with Mairui. Although Mrs. Kang also talked about different things and had a gentle attitude. In college, she was famous for her glutinous rice dumplings. which are glutinous, soft and sweet. She had been married for many years and she wanted to be square or round, casual and homely. But every day facing glutinous rice dumplings, it is inevitable that the taste buds will be dull. Meeting Mei Rui is equivalent to seeing shrimp roe fish, even though Mei Rui humbly said again and again that it is just a piece of white paper with its own 1,000-layer flavor, which is equivalent to the Suzhou delicacy. It has more bones and less meat, not covering up its beauty, with layers upon layers, covered with shrimp roe, densely packed with small thorns, and has a complex taste, just like Mei Rui's temper, scheming, capable of crying and laughing, deep and light, exquisite on the surface, sharp on the inside. Really, it is also fresh, salty and fragrant. Kangtai and Mei Rui are equal to Suzhou's Wang Tianyuan glutinous rice double brewed dough, and PK's Kazai secret shrimp roe fish, Lesh and Leshui. You can't choose between them. Mr. Kang had a phone call with Mei Rui, Millie said. I was just about to dial the number when the call came. Mr. Kang said, it's been okay lately, but the surroundings are too noisy. Mei Rui said, I am too busy. And now I have to go through the formalities with an agency, and there are too many things to do. Mr. Kang said that he bought a house. Millie said, yes, 2 bedrooms and 1 living room. Mr. Kang said that he was going to be a landlord. Anyway, Mei Rui said that he decided to live at home. Mr. Kang looked at the driver in front of him and said in a low voice that the matter mentioned last time had been resolved, so he was moving. Mei Rui said, forget it. In fact, I am still the same as before. I have said that as a woman, you should be good to your own family. If I buy this small house, if the decoration is satisfactory, I will move in. Mr. Kang said nothing. Mei Rui said that the next step is to ask the engineering team to buy a jacuzzi. Mr. Kang said, hard work. Mei Rui said, I have already thought about it and it is not convenient to talk about it now. Mr. Kang said nothing. Mary said, I told a man the most private things, and I felt a little regretful. Mr. Kang said nothing. Merriman said, this man looks elegant and experienced. He will miss me and care about me in the future. Mr. Kang smiled. Mary hung up the phone. One day after that, Mei Rui called and told Mr. Kang that Mei Ruinyang was finally divorced and was going to Hong Kong immediately to reunite with Xiao Kai. 3 days later, Mei Rui called again and said, Mr. Kang, my mother is really gone and there is no way she can go back to Shanghai. Even if she comes back, she will basically stay in a hotel. I cried several times. Mr. Kang said nothing. Mei Rui said, that day when I entered the room, my mother-in-law said that she was an old single woman in an old alley. My mother-in-law walked in and out, and she had walked enough. After I left, Mei Rui wanted to change the environment, and the mother completely agreed. This old house on Shinza Road, I immediately sold it and bought the ground floor of Yan'an Middle Road. It was used exclusively by the Coal Guard. There were few neighbors next door and it was quiet. My mother put some savings into it so that Mei Rui could live a stable life. She was willing to do so. After hearing this, I told her that my mother could live there when she returned to Shanghai. My mother smiled and rummaged through boxes and cabinets. She was very busy. She had to clean up a lot of waste products that day. The room was covered with large and small foreskins, Chinese cotton jackets, brocade cotton jackets, blouses, royal satin cotton jackets, corduroy pants, and khakis, trousers, two-way shirt, spring and autumn woolen coat, flannel pea coat, double-breasted new park coat made by an old tailor in the alley, serge trousers, chevigny trousers, mid-length fiber two-way shirt. Mr. Kang smiled and said, "Ha, it's the same in every family." Mei Rui said, "I turned over it but haven't spoken yet. My mother said it was all garbage and was thrown into the trash can." I kept silent and unwrapped a bag of old leather clothes, a sunburst plaid shirt and a seersucker skirt. I immediately thought of the past. Mom said, "What are you looking at? Get it out quickly." Several large furskins and neatly folded sheets, quilts. My mother said that I don't need quilt covers anymore. I looked through a pile of old clothes, woolen sweaters, acrylic cashmere 3 lapel collars, My mother said that if they were going to die, they would throw them all into the trash can. I opened a box, which contained many shirts, two-way shirts, pleated skirts, Zhongking skirts made of vermilion crepe, and skirts with lotus leaf piping in lake crepe. Mother said, "Throw them all out." Mr. Kang said he was too angry. Mairui said, "I can only keep quiet. These skirts are my mother's treasures." When she resumed dancing, my mother responded positively and made her own dance skirts. They were made of georgette yarn, black velvet, hand-sewn sequins, and gold and silver inlays. Nowadays, my mother is ruthless and unreasonable. She is really too rustic. She looks like a skinny person when you see her. It's strange. In a box, there is a set of Lianyan clothes from the 1950s. Overalls from the alley processing team period. A blue cloth work cap, and sleeves, neatly folded. My mother told me that she was not allowed to untie it. She was so unlucky that she was going to die. When I saw this pile of rubbish, I could only hate it. My mother's good youth was all wasted. I didn't listen to it. That day, as soon as I turned over it, my mother would tell me to take them all out, wipe them all, send them to the neighborhood committee, or donate them to poor places in the countryside. Mr. Kang said nothing. Mei Ruiz said that there was a big footbath in the corner, filled with fashionable shoes from the past, including Dutch-style high tops, shallow teen-necks, siumai heads, boat shoes, horizontal climbing shoes, including several pairs of dancing leather shoes, which are Lantang sheepskin shoes. Let's ask the cobbler to sew a piece of climbing equipment, and then we can dance and spin without slipping. Mr. Kang said that in the dance halls a few years ago, the old aunties still dressed like this. Mairui said, "When I saw it, I immediately thought of the past, of me growing up and my mother getting older. My mother kicked me in the foot and said, 'What's the use? It's a life-threatening society, a scary society.' Back then, I was exactly the same as the Yakuza. I don't say anything. There are all changsams in a camphor wood box. Before and after my mother's wedding. Singles, jackets, woolen changsams, flash satin, cordo silk, flat top silk, vertical dotted silk, plain and quiet colors, and some the day after the rain, peach jade, satin, light bamboo leaf color. Each piece has an extremely thin waist, different styles, piping leather buttons, dark buttons, gouge and incense buttons, seemingly simple, but in fact they are also magical." I said, "I want the changsam." My mother, "Calm down. I tell you, I like them all." My mother told me that I couldn't wear them at all. So what would I do if I wanted them? I said, "Make a memorial." Mom said that under the box, there were a few sharkskin changsams, that is, rayon, green, yellow, pink, and light blue. Among them, snow white was the best color. At that time, men made white suits. White changsam is the most popular for women. I didn't say anything and opened another pile. Lao Jifu, a rich silk shop, has silk, chiffon, gabardine, shelving, qigong satin, and twill. Mr. Kang didn't answer, and he started to feel annoyed. Mairui said that the cloth store in the past was really lively when I thought about it. The store was full of people, a few wires were stretched over it, and bills were issued. The bills were clipped on, and with a snap, they slid over the wires and onto the counter. After knocking on the stamp, giving it a thumbs up, and then sending it back, an old uncle sat on the high stool, calling from morning till night, "Comrade customers, beware of thieves' bones. Keep your wallets in hand, and be careful of your 3 hands." Mr. Kang smiled. Mairui said, "My mother-in-law told me as soon as she heard it. Okay, stop talking." With this little information, if Mairui gets remarried, she can make a custom-made changsam and use it. "Let me tell you, where will I get married?" Mr. Kang said. "This is difficult to explain." Mairui said, "Sure." My mother looked at it and said that changsams made of Western materials were the most fashionable in the old society. Nowadays, changsams are weird. They are all Chinese-style flower heads, country boys, poor looks, country women, restaurants. The women who wear sliding doors dress up with either peonies or red plum blossoms. They think that wearing a cheongsam means they look like a golden dragon or a golden phoenix, which means they are wrapped up tightly. Fat people also wear bright satin, and they also need to be wrapped up, which is equivalent to soy sauce pricking. Meet and Huzhou meet Zongzi. They think they are beautiful and charming, and old Shanghaians will laugh when they see it. I don't ring, my mother told me, but to be honest, the market is almost the same as before liberation. Maybe Western-style materials are popular again. Anyway, my mother doesn't want to see it anymore in this room, so it can be over. I didn't answer, so I asked my mother if I should go back to Shanghai after arriving in Hong Kong. My mother-in-law said that she usually doesn't come back. House, money, and personal belongings are all she wants. If Mary gets divorced, just tell me. Okay, I burst into tears when I heard it. My mother-in-law said, "Dear girl, women only value feelings. If they rely on a good man, they will be at ease." I was silent and wiped my tears. My mother-in-law said that if she finds a good son-in-law in Hong Kong, Mairui will come to Hong Kong to get married and live a happy life. I said, "Mom, I don't think about remarrying anymore. I'm completely hurt. I see through it." Mr. Kang said nothing.
All right, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.